The galaxy had learned to fear Queen Valora. She was a legend among the Krylith Dominion, a species so tall and strong that most humans could not imagine them as real. Her claws could slice steel, her voice could command fleets, and her eyes burned with the power of 1,000 stars. Entire planets surrendered before her ships even landed. Tales of her strength and ruthlessness traveled faster than light, and every soldier, diplomat, and civilian knew one thing: Queen Valora was not to be crossed. And yet, on a small human outpost near the edge of Kruller space, a single human engineer named Ethan Cole did not feel fear. Ethan was an unassuming man by most standards. His frame was average, his hair brown and simple, his clothes plain. He had never sought glory, never dreamed of fame, and he certainly had never wanted to meet the most feared alien in the galaxy. He worked on technical equipment, keeping communication lines steady between planets and monitoring spacecraft navigation. His life was quiet and logical. Fear to him was a useless emotion. Curiosity was what mattered. The meeting had been arranged as part of a human Krylith summit. Both species had suffered losses in past conflicts, and leaders had decided to prevent further wars. Every human delegate arrived tense, hands shaking, hearts racing. Every Krylith soldier present towered over them, exuding intimidation without even trying. And at the center of it all was Queen Valora herself. When she entered the summit hall, the temperature seemed to drop. Her armor reflected the dim lights of the room. Her tail coiled behind her like a living weapon, and her claws clicked on the metallic floor with each step. The humans froze, whispering frantic warnings to each other. Even the bravest ambassadors seemed to shrink in their seats, all except Ethan. He had been adjusting a console near the corner, checking translation frequencies. When he finally looked up, their eyes met. Queen Valora's gaze was sharp, piercing, and full of expectation. Yet Ethan did not flinch. He did not shrink. He simply met her stare with calm blue eyes, neither defiant nor submissive, just observing. Valora's eyes narrowed. No one had ever looked at her like that. Usually, she inspired awe, terror, or respect, but never calm. She studied him, her instincts screaming at her that this human was unusual. A human in the presence of a queen like her was expected to tremble, to bow, to be silent. And yet, here was one who simply existed. She dismissed the other delegates with a wave of her claw. Her voice boomed, sharp and commanding, reverberating through the hall. "Leave us." The humans scrambled, whispering questions, while the Krylith soldiers obeyed without hesitation. Soon, the hall was empty except for Valora and Ethan. She leaned closer, and even though the ceiling was high, she stooped slightly to speak to him. "Everyone is afraid of me," she said, her voice a deep echo that seemed to vibrate in his chest. "But why aren't you afraid of me, human?" Ethan swallowed once, keeping his voice steady. "I see you," he said simply. "I don't see a monster. I see someone trying to do her duty. Fear doesn't help with understanding." Valora blinked. She had not expected this answer. Her jaws clicked in surprise. No human had ever spoken to her like that. Usually, they stuttered, they pleaded, or they tried to run. But this one spoke with clarity, with honesty, with calm. "You are bold," she said, circling him slowly. "Or perhaps foolish." "I suppose it could look like that," Ethan admitted. "But I've worked with dangerous machines and deadly systems. Fear doesn't solve anything. Understanding does." The queen stopped, tilting her head. For a long moment, neither moved. It was as if the universe itself held its breath. Valora could sense something different in this human, something no one else had offered her before. Respect without submission, attention without weakness. "Come with me," she said finally, her tone still commanding but slightly softer. You will answer questions aboard my flagship." Ethan nodded, feeling neither fear nor hesitation. The other humans and Kryliths would have seen this as a death sentence. But Ethan had learned early in life that survival came from understanding, not panic. The journey to the flagship was tense. Krylith soldiers towered above him, their glowing eyes scanning him as if expecting him to collapse at any moment. The human delegates whispered fears into their communicators. But Ethan walked steadily, his mind analyzing the ship, noting details that would have escaped anyone else. He observed the efficiency of the airlock systems, the smooth coordination of the Krylith soldiers, the hum of energy reactors in the walls. Once aboard the flagship, Velora wasted no time. She led him to the observation deck, where he could see fleets of ships stretching across the void of space, like stars fallen into formation. "Do you see our power?" she asked, her voice proud, almost reverent. "Do you understand why everyone fears me?" "I understand why some might fear you," Ethan said honestly. "But fear is only useful if you intend to fight blindly. Power is something else entirely." Velora paused. The human's words were precise, deliberate. He did not insult her, nor did he flatter her. He simply stated a truth from his perspective. She had spent centuries perfecting fear as a tool. No one had ever challenged it in this way. "Interesting," she muttered. "Perhaps you are more than a human. Perhaps you see the universe differently." She led him through the ship, showing him the training arenas where Krylith soldiers honed their strength against beasts and machines. She expected him to shrink, to look horrified, to plead. Instead, he asked questions. He asked about the beast biology, about the energy output of the machines, about the principles behind the combat training. His questions were curious, intelligent, and calm. Even the soldiers whispered among themselves. "The Queen has chosen a human to accompany her." "He is fearless," one murmured. Velora did not correct them. Instead, she continued observing him, noting how unafraid he remained, how his mind worked with clarity instead of panic. There was something valuable about this. She had always surrounded herself with those who feared her, those who obeyed her without question. But fear alone did not cultivate intelligence or loyalty. Perhaps this human could teach her a different way. Hours passed, and Velora decided to test him further. She led him to the combat deck, where simulations of the deadliest Krylith enemies were projected in holographic form. The enemies attacked with precise strikes, fast and lethal. The Krylith soldiers would have seen the simulation as terrifying. Ethan observed it, noting weaknesses and calculating patterns. He moved when needed, showing skill and calm reasoning. Velora's eyes widened slightly. No one had ever passed such tests without showing fear. Not even her most skilled generals. "You remain unafraid," she said, her voice a whisper this time, almost personal. "Even when surrounded by death, even when all would panic." "You do not." "I do not believe in panic," Ethan said simply. "I believe in seeing clearly and acting wisely. Fear only clouds judgment." The Queen studied him in silence. She had ruled for centuries, commanded entire fleets, and crushed those who opposed her without hesitation. And yet, she felt something unfamiliar. Curiosity? Respect? Perhaps even a flicker of admiration. This human was different. As the day turned into night on the distant planets, visible through the flagship's observation windows, Velora spoke again softly. "You will remain aboard my ship. I wish to understand you. And perhaps you will understand me." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. He was no diplomat, no soldier. But he had something far rarer aboard this ship: calm, clarity, and the courage to look at a legend in the eye without fear. And for the first time in centuries, Queen Velora felt something she had never experienced before. She felt intrigued. The galaxy outside the flagship remained tense. Everyone feared her. Everyone expected terror to follow. But aboard her ship, a single human walked without fear, asking questions, observing, thinking. And in that, he had already begun to change everything. The following morning, the flagship gleamed under the light of a nearby star. Inside, Queen Valora moved with her usual precision, each step commanding attention, each gesture purposeful. Yet her mind was occupied with the human named Ethan Cole. She could not stop thinking about him. His calm, clear eyes, the way he spoke without fear, and the way he analyzed every situation. He was unlike any human she had ever encountered. Today, you will face more challenges, Valora said, her claws resting on the edge of the observation deck. Her voice carried both authority and a quiet curiosity. I need to see how far your calm reaches. Are you truly as fearless as you claim? Ethan simply nodded, adjusting the strap of his portable toolkit. He had already begun studying the flagship systems, noting ways they could be improved. But he followed her willingly, ready to face whatever test she prepared. The first challenge was a training arena, a massive chamber where holographic enemies of the Krylith appeared in waves. These projections were realistic enough to make most soldiers anxious. The enemies attacked with precision, simulating the speed, strength, and strategy of real opponents. Valora watched closely as Ethan moved. He did not panic. He did not freeze. Instead, he observed the patterns of attack, noticed weak points in the holographic designs, and even suggested adjustments that could make the soldiers' training more effective. The Krylith engineers who observed him were astonished. One whispered, He's learning from them as if it's simple logic, not a life-and-death situation. Valora's eyes glinted with interest. No human had ever impressed her like this. Most were terrified or overly cautious, but Ethan was calculating, fearless, and willing to act. He moved with precision, yet without arrogance. After the simulation ended, Valora spoke, softer than usual. You do not fear these holograms, yet they mimic death. Why? Because I know they are not real, Ethan said calmly. Fear only works when the danger is unknown or unavoidable. Here, I can see clearly. I can learn and adapt. Valora studied him silently. She had ruled through fear for centuries, using her reputation to keep the galaxy in check. Yet here was someone who faced her and her tools of intimidation without flinching. There was a strange power in that honesty and clarity that even she had rarely seen. The second challenge was more physical. Valora led him to a chamber containing a massive beast restrained by energy barriers. Its scales were as thick as metal, and its claws could tear through walls. Most humans would have screamed or frozen or begged to leave. Ethan, however, stepped closer. He carefully observed the creature, noting its posture, the way it reacted to sound, and the hum of the energy fields around it. Valora expected him to panic, but he simply asked, Can I study it closer? Learn its behavior? You are brave, she said, her voice a whisper, almost admiration. Or foolish. I prefer brave, he said with a slight smile. Foolish has no purpose in analysis. Ethan spent hours studying the creature, taking careful notes, and even suggesting ways the energy barriers could be enhanced to keep it safe while improving training procedures. Valora observed silently, fascinated by how methodical he was. She realized that this human possessed a rare combination of courage, intelligence, and calm reasoning. Later, Valora decided to test him in a situation with real danger. A faction loyal to her rival queen had infiltrated one of the outer decks. They intended to sabotage the ship's power core and eliminate her. Ethan was nearby when alarms blared. Soldiers rushed past him, their weapons drawn, and Valora herself moved toward the source of the breach. Without hesitation, Ethan acted. He noticed a loose conduit in the corridor that could fall and injure her. He reached out, grabbing the heavy metal before it could strike. In doing so, he put himself directly in harm's way. One of the intruders lunged toward him, thinking him an easy target, but Ethan reacted with quick thinking. He redirected the attacker into a secure containment field, using the environment around him. Valora arrived moments later, assessing the situation. She found Ethan standing calmly, unhurt, and her eyes widened. "You risked your life for me," she said, a hint of astonishment in her voice. "Why?" Ethan looked at her steadily. "Because you are not my enemy," he said. "You are someone who needs help to do your duty safely. Fear wouldn't have solved anything. I acted to protect life." Silence fell. Valora had never heard a human speak this way. She had spent centuries commanding through fear, ruling through strength, and expecting loyalty only through intimidation. And yet, here was a human who acted out of principle, without fear, without desire for power, simply because it was the right thing to do. For the first time, Valora felt a strange, unfamiliar emotion. It was not fear, not anger, not admiration. It was respect. And maybe something deeper, though she did not yet understand it. The aftermath of the breach was quiet. The intruders were contained, the power core stabilized, and the crew returned to their duties. But Valora did not leave Ethan's side. She wanted to understand him, to learn why he was different from all others who had ever served or feared her days passed aboard the flagship. Valora and Ethan continued to interact, each learning from the other. She would demonstrate her abilities, expecting fear or hesitation, and Ethan would respond with calm analysis and thoughtful questions. He never flinched, never submitted, and never allowed panic to cloud his judgment. The crew began to whisper among themselves. "The human? He's not afraid of the Queen. He's protected by her in ways none of us can understand." Valora herself could not explain it. She had grown used to commanding respect through fear, but with Ethan, it was different. His courage was not born from ignorance. It was born from understanding. His loyalty was not born from fear. It was earned through shared experience and trust. And in that, she found herself drawn to him in a way she had never experienced before. One evening, as the ship drifted near a nebula, Valora and Ethan stood together on the observation deck. Stars glimmered in the distance, and the light from the nebula bathed the deck in soft colors. Valora turned to him, her voice quieter than ever before. "Ethan, you have shown me something I did not know I could feel. You are fearless, yes, but more than that. You are steady. You are human in a way I never understood until now." Ethan smiled gently. "I am just a man," he said. "I do what I can, and I try to see clearly. That is all." "No," Valora said softly. "It is more than that. You stand without fear where others would crumble. You think where others act blindly. You protect where others would hesitate. You have changed something in me." Ethan looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. He had never intended to do anything so extraordinary. He had only acted as he always did, calmly, clearly, logically. And yet, here he was, standing before the most feared queen in the galaxy, having gained her respect in ways he could not have imagined. Suddenly, a communication alert rang. Valora's console flashed with a warning of potential hostiles nearby. Most humans would panic. Most Krylith would prepare for battle. But Ethan calmly analyzed the incoming signals, cross-referenced them with fleet positions, and suggested a strategy that minimized risk while maximizing defense. Valora executed his plan, and the threat was neutralized before it could escalate. The Queen turned to him afterward, her voice filled with a mix of pride and astonishment. "You are unlike anyone I have ever known. You do not fear me, you do not falter, and you do not fail." Ethan shrugged slightly. "I just do what makes sense," he said simply. Fear doesn't solve problems. Understanding does. Valora nodded, a rare smile touching her face. For centuries, she had ruled through fear, commanding obedience with terror and power. But now, she realized that perhaps there was another way, a way to lead through respect, understanding, and trust. And at the center of this revelation was a single human, whose courage had no need for intimidation, and whose intelligence had no need for threat. For the first time, Queen Valora felt something she could not name. Perhaps it was respect, perhaps admiration, perhaps the beginning of a bond that could change the fate of the galaxy. And she knew, without doubt, that she would never look at humans or at fear the same way again. Ethan stood beside her, calm and steady, unaware of the profound impact he had made on the most feared queen in the galaxy. And in that moment, the universe itself seemed to shift, as if acknowledging that the most powerful beings were not those who inspired terror, but those who inspired courage.